Good morning to everybody. A warm welcome to the Info Days for the cluster Digital Industry and Space. Uh, my name is Jürgen Tietje, Head of Unit in DG Research Innovation. Let me briefly introduce to you some housekeeping rules for hopefully 2 successful days. The first is Slido. Slido is a tool by which you can use to ask questions, and the Slido code will be now displayed on the screen. And the Slido code is also available for you on the website. So that will be the main tool for asking questions in the plenary sessions and in the PAL sessions we have foreseen for the next 2 days. Let me briefly take you through the program. And we have today 2 plenary sessions. First, I think a welcome by the co-chairs of DG Grow, DG Connect, DG Research Innovation, and DG DEFIS, who were driving the whole work program discussions, and a general presentation where we will focus on international cooperation, partnerships, social sciences, and many other things. Then there will be a Q&A session for you all with Slido questions. Thereafter, we will have horizontal issues, which concerns synergies across programs, how to make synergies, including state aid issues. Thereafter, we will take a deep dive and go into PAL sessions. We are starting with Destination 1, Climate Neutral, Circular and Digitized Production. At the same time, you can speak about space-based infrastructure, services, applications, and data. And we have the first part on human-centered and ethical development of digital and industrial technologies, where you have issues like augmented extended reality and AI. The second day, we will continue with PAL sessions. So we have the second half of Destination 6, which focus on systemic approaches to make the most of the technologies within society and industry. We will then have a PAL session 1 hour later, starting on data and computing technologies. And we have first part of increased autonomy and key strategic value chains for resilient industry, starting at 10:30. The Essence Hill will be here, topics related to raw materials and SMEs. We'll have then 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, digital and emerging technologies related to Destination 4. And we will have in the afternoon a session on Destination 2, increased autonomy and key strategic value chains. The focus here will be advanced materials. So this is the program for today. I would like also to highlight that for each of the PAL sessions, videos have been pre-recorded and uploaded and can be seen. So that should facilitate for you also the understanding of what is actually on the table. And if you allow me now, I wish you and all of us 2 successful days. I'm happy to hand over now to the co-chairs, starting with Ulla Engelmann. Thank you.
Thank you, Jürgen, and good morning and welcome to this Info Days for the first work program of Cluster 4. My name is Ulla Engelmann, and I'm the Director in charge of Networks and Governance in the DG responsible for internal market, industry, entrepreneurship, and SMEs DG Grow. A year ago, the Commission adopted a new industrial strategy which we updated beginning of May in order to include the effects and the lessons learned during the crisis. The strategy aims to help Europe's industry lead the green and digital transformation while strengthening our global competitiveness and strategic autonomy. So, as we all know, once the crisis hit, we had to adapt, and we have several lessons learned. The need to reinforce our single market, the need to address our strategic dependencies, and the need to accelerate the green and digital transitions to meet our new increasing ambition targets of 55% emission reduction by 2030. With the recovery, we now have the opportunity and need to tackle the twin transition. In the coming weeks, the Commission will also present its Fit for 55 package. What is certain is that there is now a crucial need to accompany industry on the path of decarbonization and digitalization, and research and innovation play an important role in this regard. In this context, Horizon Europe and Cluster 4 in particular have a key role to play, and we need really to see what are reflecting from the lessons from the current crisis. First, there is a renewed momentum around tackling our dependence on certain raw materials. Raw materials are key enabler for a range of sectors and are essential prerequisites for the development of strategic sectors such as renewable energy, electric mobility, defense and aerospace, digital technologies. At the same time, demand for raw material is set to grow, and the proposed topics under Destination 2 mirror Commission's commitment from the Critical Raw Material Action Plan to address research on waste processing, advanced materials, substitution, Earth observation and remote sensing, exploitation and processing of critical raw materials to reduce environmental impacts starting from 21. Secondly, R&I activities have a key role to play in supporting industry on the path towards climate neutrality by 2050, in line with our ambitions for the recovery. Energy-intensive industries are at the core of many industrial value chains and are large greenhouse gas emitters. Here I would draw your attention in particular to the topic proposed under the Clean Steel and Process for Planets partnerships. These partnerships are also a reflection of the cooperative approach we are developing, working not only for industry but with industry. Finally, we recognize that the transition to a greener and more digital economy can only be achieved through a holistic approach involving both the development of innovative digital and industrial technologies and innovations or transformation in a variety of areas, covering new business models, infrastructures, policies, regulations, and so on. Here, I would also like to draw your attention to the activities supporting the transition of SMEs towards sustainability. This is also behind the spirit of the new European Bauhaus initiative, which involves a collective effort to imagine and build a future that is sustainable, inclusive, and beautiful, and to improve the quality of our living experience. This is why we have proposed topics on demonstrating innovative practices for renovation in social and affordable housing districts under Destination 2, and on a new way to build under Destination 1, which applies this approach to improve design and construction processes, as well as a focus on social and affordable housing. The Info Days are an important moment in the publication of a work program, and I want to thank you for your active participation during the next 2 days. You are key to help us to make Horizon Europe a success. And with this, I give over to my co-chair, Peter Tröll, Director for Prosperity in DG RTD. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulla, and good morning to all. It's an important moment, as Ulla said, in the launch of our investment package for this year and next year. From my side, from DG Research and Innovation, let me just recall 4 of the key novelties in this Horizon Europe program, which might also important for you as you build consortia to have in mind when you draft your proposals and form your teams. The first one is the key strategic orientations we have in the strategic plan for the first 4 years of Horizon Europe. And here you need to, this is really the overall objective for the impact we want to achieve with these investments across the first 4 years, across the pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. So what you need to have in mind always is the first orientation, digitally enabled, circular, climate neutral economy. That's the core of also our cluster on digital industry and space. Second key strategic orientation is strategic open autonomy, and third, inclusive democratic society. Very important also because we know with a strong industrial base, we keep a cohesion in Europe. And fourthly, perhaps less important for us, the restoring of ecosystems. So these four strategic orientations are the overall umbrella for our investment packages. Second, the structure of the topics. We have now a very simple structure: expected outcome and scope. Expected outcome is your sphere of control in the project. What the broader impact has been defined in the destinations, and you will hear more of it in a moment. So that makes the structure of the topics simple and straightforward. Third, very important when we look at industry and our investment there, it's the human centricity. This is stronger than before, and it's not just the inclusion, which is important in itself, the inclusion of social sciences, humanities, the arts, the designs in the projects. Not only social innovation, which is present in some of the topics very explicitly, but it's also making sure that whenever we develop new technologies, that we have in mind what this means in terms of well-being, health, safety of the individual worker. Very important element here in our investments. And last, the fourth element I wanted to highlight here, which is new, is the hop-on scheme for widening countries. This will come next year, a dedicated call. So once the consortia are formed, with an average amount we target between 200 and 400,000 euros to bring in a selected consortium, representatives from widening countries, if they are not yet represented in a consortium. So there's a double opportunity to involve countries, researchers, innovators, institutions from countries which are less represented, which are the widening countries. Double opportunity, first when you build your consortia, and second with this hop-on scheme. For the rest, there is a lot of continuity in our program, and that applies to the evaluation criteria, which you know very well: excellence, impact, implementation, with the same weighting system we had in the industry pillar of Horizon 2020. The process peer review is the same, and also the people are the same, although we have delegated this cluster to the Health and Digital Agency, whereas in Horizon 2020 it was implemented here, the industry part here in DG Research and Innovation. But the wonderful colleagues who have done the implementation for Horizon 2020, they are in the agency, and we are one family, so also continuity there. That's in a nutshell I wanted to share with you this morning. I'm very grateful that the colleagues have prepared for you a wonderful program, as Jürgen outlined at the beginning. It's very important that you are successful, so I wish you all a very good session and lots of success in your role in making our investments a success. Thank you. And with that, I hand over to Thibaut Kleiner from DG Connect.
Many thanks, Peter. Good morning. So Thibaut Kleiner, I'm the director in charge of policy, strategy and outreach in DG Connect. And indeed, Cluster 4 is a big cluster. As you see, we have not only digital, but also industry and space. And you may wonder how all this can fit together. I think that Peter explained the way it is organized is that we start from these strategic objectives. So really it is important also when you will apply and form consortium that you keep in mind our strategic orientations And one of these is really the idea that we can also learn now from our experience in the pandemic. As far as the digital transformation is concerned, we are all witnessing a tremendous acceleration. And I think this is important because we have become aware of the importance of these digital technologies, not only for everyday life, but also for our strategic autonomy, which is one of the objectives in this cluster. And I think for digital, the question you have to answer is quite straightforward. Really, it's about a technological race that is happening globally. And the question is whether the EU will be able to somehow remain in the race, because we can set our own rules, our own standards, and because we are developing cutting edge technology. So really, that's what we aim with this cluster. We have high ambitions. We believe that we have all it takes to really have this positive orientation to the digital transformation, and really to have a kind of technological sovereignty in mind when we prepare these projects. And this is really the vision that the Commission has put forward in our digital compass last March. So I would invite you to have a look if you want to see where we are heading. And really the idea in this communication is we set our target towards 2030, and we want to make really progress around digital skills, digital infrastructures and technologies, but also in terms of the transformation of businesses and the modernization of our public services. So all these areas actually are covered somehow in Cluster 4, and we see Cluster 4 as really the beating heart of this digital decades transformation, and as a key instrument for Europe to really advance and organize its strategic research and innovation activities, so that we can really emerge out of this transformation stronger, thanks to really our technological developments. And I think really one angle that you will see is very significant in the various areas, and it cuts across really, not only digital but also industry and space, is the importance of data. And this was clear in our data strategy that we adopted last year, and it's also clear in our orientations. We want to make sure that the use of data is optimized, and that it can really develop further some innovation across industrial sectors, and also leverage really the potential of member states to contribute as well. And from data, we also see the integration of our value chains from low power components and semiconductors to advanced computing systems, future network and edge computings, and all this together with the data volumes increasing will impact on the digital ecosystem. So during these 2 days, you will see that there is a lot for you to contribute in this work program. There are many actions in all key digital technologies, and really we are looking forward to see proposals that have a high impact. I mean, impact is really the name of the game for Horizon Europe, and we want to make sure that the EU, through your contributions, will develop really its technological capabilities. Just one word before I conclude. The Cluster 4 is not the only one when you will find also some elements linked to digital. We have very importantly 3 digital joint undertakings that are part of this cluster. So Euro HPC, key digital technologies, which is the success of Excel, many of you may be familiar, and also the smart networks and services, a new joint undertaking dealing notably with the path towards 6G. And these joint undertakings really are in the making. They will be established formally later this year, and they will complement a lot of what we are presenting today to leverage investments together with member states and industry. So really, we have great expectations from Cluster 4. We are very happy that we are launching it today and that we have the potential to tell you more about it. And let's make sure that together we can have a great impact and develop these digital technologies for the benefit of everyone. And with this, I will pass to my fourth co-chair, Ekaterini Kavada from the DG DEFIS. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Thibaut, and good morning to everybody. My name is Ekaterini Kavada. I'm the director responsible for space innovation and outreach. I have to say that I'm more than pleased to be with you today in order to present the first work program of Cluster 4, and in particular the space destination. For me, it's more than an honor, as it is the very first time that we have a work program uniquely for digital industry and space, able to allow us to go ahead with synergies and optimize all the results of this particular ecosystem. Turning to space, research and innovation funding is close to $500 million for the period 21-22. For the space stakeholders, this is always a modest amount considering the ambitions that we have in this field. However, let me say that thinking positively and creatively, this small amount will really force us to be creative and make the best out of synergies and collaboration. This is the idea of the cluster, and this is what space will try to get as a tangible result. You will see from our topics, the 45, as well as all the topics delegated to our two agencies, the European Space Agency and USP. We propose not general or basic research for the sake of making research in the space. On the opposite, we try to serve in a very precise way the EU space policy, the EU space strategy, and serve the mission of operational systems, considering that we have at least 2 operational systems. On the other side, we have to protect and even to reinforce the global competitiveness of our European Union space field and assets. Following the adoption of the space program last May, we have for the first time something unique in the history of the space field in Europe. We achieved to bring together the 4 space components under a single instrument for the first time. So we have Galileo, EGNOS, Copernicus, but also new features like GovSatcom and SSA under the same umbrella with the same objective and the same toolbox. And in particular, in the context of this toolbox, Horizon Europe will come in order to make, as always, research a significant contribution on the one hand to the evolution of our existing assets like Galileo and Copernicus, on the other hand, for the first time, to develop all the upcoming infrastructure and services. Definitely in the course of the info days and from my colleagues, you will have the occasion to get much more information and much more details on the content of this work program. But allow me very briefly to say that for Galileo, EGNOS and Copernicus, all the topics proposed are concentrating to the evolution of this infrastructure and the services. We already offer something valuable to our citizens, but we don't have to stay there. The objective of our research portfolio is to go ahead as fast as we can and out of the box as disruptive as we can. On the other side, we have always in mind that we don't build infrastructures or space infrastructures in particular for the sake of having this infrastructure. The objective is to develop services and in particular applications in order to serve our citizens. And this is another goal to be served by Horizon Europe work program. Coming to the new components, two particular issues. We start with the sustainability of space and the SST, and in line with the space regulation, most of the work to be done under research, it will be given to the SST partnership composed by a wider participation of our member states. And turning to the new approach on communications, telecommunications, secure telecommunications, we are coming with the GovSatcom, where we will have not only a flavor of new telecommunication technologies, but also quantum technologies that they will ensure the security approach of this field. Last but not least, and turning on the space industrial ecosystem, and in particular on the new space ecosystem that we want to promote, we're gathering under the Cassini initiative all actions to support the space entrepreneurship. Our objective through Horizon Europe is to give the possibility to startups, to SMEs, to mid-caps to be present and contribute as well with their knowledge and their disruptive approach, the future of the space ecosystem. Let me conclude with a very last point, very important for space, very important for research. We always underline our continuous support to the international cooperation. And we will always come with the principle of the open strategic autonomy, as Peter mentioned it on the principles, considering that these cooperation should respect fairness and guarantees reciprocity. To conclude, I wish you the best in applying in the cluster 4, in applying in space destination. We count on you, and we consider that with your contribution, this work program will become a reality. My team will remain always available in case you have questions, in case you need advice, starting today and with the info day and the specific space session this afternoon. But whenever you need any support, European Commission doors will be open and the space will be at your service. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
And now Natasha Folimel will take the floor to take us over the vision and intervention logic.
Thank you, and good morning. My name is Natasha Folimel, and I work in DG Grow. I will now, as Nicola mentioned, run you through some information on the impact logic, which is at the heart of the Horizon Europe Framework Program, and its implications for the first program, as Peter and Thibaut have already outlined. So as you have heard, under Horizon Europe, we've taken a more strategic and impact-based approach to EU research and innovation investment compared to previous framework programs. This impact-driven logic ensures that the key political priorities of the Commission are effectively supported by the research and innovation projects funded by Horizon Europe. So as you heard earlier, we have co-created for the first time a strategic plan which covers the years 2021-2024, which acts as a compass to stay on course with the political priorities of the Commission, with a focus on a climate-neutral and green Europe fit for the digital age, and where the economy works for the people. And as you have just heard from our Cluster 4 co-chairs, the previous slide shows a non-exhaustive list of the more recent Commission communications which are supported by Horizon Europe and specifically Cluster 4 Digital Industry and Space. So as Europe gears up for a more resilient green and digital recovery, the EU needs to maintain a strong industrial and technological presence in key parts of the digital, industrial and other supply chains. in industrial ecosystems while safeguarding its ability to access and use space. This is critical not only to be able to compete globally, but also to protect its citizens, deliver services and products of the highest quality, and preserve its values and socioeconomic model. And this takes us to the overarching vision behind the proposed investments under Cluster 4, which are of a Europe shaping competitive, secure, and trusted technologies for a European industry with global leadership in key areas, enabling production and consumption to respect the boundaries of our planet, and maximizing for the benefits for all parts of society in a variety of social, economic, and territorial contexts in Europe. And now for the strategic priorities. As you will have heard this morning, the strategic plan defines key strategic orientations for research and innovation investments over the period 21-24. The aim is to ensure an effective interface between EU policy priorities and program activities, and ultimately the research and innovation projects that are funded by Horizon Europe. The strategic plan identifies 4 key strategic orientations in total, and each of these are further broken down into expected impacts. These expected impacts act as a bridge between the strategic plan and the work programs, and they ensure coherence with the Commission political priorities. So Cluster 4 specifically directly supports, and as Peter has already outlined this morning, 3 of these 4 key strategic orientations, which you can see on the slide. Firstly, promoting an open strategic autonomy by leading the development of key digital enabling and emerging technologies, sectors, and value chains. Then making Europe the first digitally enabled, circular, climate neutral, and sustainable economy. And finally, but not least, creating a more resilient, inclusive, and democratic European society. Now, the destinations, so these strategic priorities are translated into destinations which structure the work program. Each destination corresponds to at least one of the key strategic orientations outlined in the strategic plan, and they provide the policy narrative for the calls and actions included in the work program. With this in mind, the first work program of Cluster 4 is organized around the following 6 destinations. One destination which relates directly to the key strategic orientation targeting making Europe the first digitally enabled, circular, climate neutral, and sustainable economy, called Climate Neutral, Circular, and Digitized Production. Topics under this destination are tagged Twin Transition. Then there are 4 destinations which relate to the key strategic orientation dedicated to promoting an open strategic autonomy. And these are Destination 2, a digitized, resource efficient, and resilient industry. The topics under this destination are tagged under Resilience. Destination 3, world-leading data and computing technologies. Here, the topics are tagged under the heading Data. Destination 4, digital and emerging technologies for competitiveness and fit for the Green Deal. Topics under this destination are tagged Digital Emerging. And Destination 5, strategic autonomy in developing, deploying, and using global space-based infrastructures, where topics are tagged under Space. And last but not least, one destination targets more specifically the key strategic orientation, which focuses on the creation of a more resilient, inclusive, and democratic European society, called Destination 6, a human-centered and ethical development of digital and industrial technologies. Here, the topics are tagged under Human. And with this, I pass the floor to Nicolas, who will run you through more details of the destinations and partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Before we turn to the structure of Cluster 4, I will say a few words about the partnerships. The partnerships are important elements in Cluster 4. A lot of the activities of the cluster are in public-private partnerships with industry. The general goal is to maximize the impact for industry and the commitments of industry. Now we have several partnerships. They come in 2 types. One is a co-programmed partnership. Those are embedded in the work program, while there are also 3 joint undertakings or institutionalized partnerships that go beyond the work program. There is also a partnership on metrology, that is an Article 185 initiative, a public-public partnership. Now, the co-program partnerships are processes for Planet, Clean Steel, and Made in Europe. Also in the digital area, artificial intelligence, data and robotics, as well as photonics. And the three joint undertakings are the high performance computing, Euro HPC, key digital technologies, smart networks and services. Also, a partnership on space systems is under consideration, but has not been implemented yet. And this is the overall structure of the work program. Natasha already explained the 6 destinations, and these are you can see once again the 6 destinations here, as well as the so-called other actions in the work program, which complement the work program in the 6 destinations. The overall budget of the cluster for 7 years is 15.348 billion euro. That includes a large contribution from the Next Generation EU. Now, for the work program of 2021-22, the programmable budget, that is the total budget that you will see in the work program, is about 3.5 billion euros. It is distributed over the 6 destinations, as you see on this slide. And in the next few minutes, we will say a few words about each destination, but of course the details, as well as the outlines of the topics, will come in the dedicated sessions. The first destination has a long name of climate neutral, circular and digitized production. And is the main destination serving the twin green and digital transition, but of course not the only one. It is the main home for the 3 industry partnerships, Made in Europe, Processes for Planet and Clean Steel, and also includes topics to support the construction industry. And you can see on this slide the numbers of topics, as well as the indicative budgets of the different areas. So the first 2 belong to the Made in Europe partnership. Then the next one is for the construction industry, a new way to build. And the next 3 are for the processes for planet, the process industries, and clean steel. And now just a few words about the indicative budgets that we show here and on other slides, as well as in the work program. These are indicative. They include a certain amount coming from that is expected from associated countries, but they will be adjusted in due course depending on additional budget that may become available from associated countries. So these are the indicative budgets that you will see in the work program, in the destinations and the respective topics. The next destination has a long name, Autonomy in Key Strategic Value Chains for a Resilient Industry. And it is a principal destination that serves resilience. It addresses value chains through support for raw materials and for advanced materials. It also has a small part of the processes for planet is here because it fits the intervention logic. And very importantly, it includes a number of topics that explicitly support the resilience and preparedness of EU businesses, including topics that address social innovation and the new European powerhouse. And once again, you see the numbers of topics and the indicative budgets of the different parts of this destination. And now I give the floor to my colleague Mathieu Deleplis of DG Connect, who will introduce us to the next 3 destinations.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the main 3 destinations on digital technologies in the cluster. So the first destination is a relatively compact one, but a crucial one, as highlighted by Thibaut Kleiner at the beginning, about data economy, so the world-leading data and computing technologies that we want to develop. So first of all, data sharing and data interoperability are still at their infancy, and actions in this destination will develop the data technologies for data sharing, data reuse. These technologies will have to respect the legal framework relating to security and privacy of data. These technologies are meant to be sector agnostic, so general purpose data technologies, which may then be further applied in specific sectors, in specific use cases. And these technologies are meant to become, at some point, the second wave of data technologies that will be implemented and deployed in the future in the European data spaces that will be built under the Digital Europe program. The second strand of work here is about the data analytics. So there is actions to develop further the European capacities in big data analytics. There is a significant potential for advances of data analytics at the intersection of many scientific, technology, and societal fields like data mining, AI, complex systems, network science, statistics, natural language understanding, and the like. So new methods and approaches are needed along the whole data lifecycle and value chain, and these methods and approaches will be developed under the topics in this destination. And then the third area of this destination is related to the shift of computing capacities from the center to the edge. Today, the great majority of data processing happens in data centers, but data processing will increasingly shift to the periphery, to the edge. And this paradigm shift is a fantastic opportunity to position Europe in the next generation of computing components, systems, and platforms that enable this transition to the periphery. So these topics will contribute to establishing the European supply and value chains in cloud to edge computing, to Internet of Things and tactile Internet, by integrating the relevant elements of computing, connectivity, IoT, AI, cybersecurity. New cloud edge technologies with enhanced performance enabled by AI will increase our autonomy in the data economy and to support hyper-distributed applications. And this session will be discussed and presented in more detail tomorrow morning from 10 to 11:30. And it's also important to understand that the JU on high performance computing EuroHPC is conceptually linked to that destination and will develop its own topics and work program in the course of this year. But it is conceptually linked to that area of the work program in Cluster 4. The next destination is a very big one, covering a lot of ground in terms of digital and emerging technologies for competitiveness and fit for the Green Deal, which is a very important element of all these digital technologies that we want to develop. The Green Deal element and the energy consumption and the carbon footprint of these digital technologies will need to, of course, be reduced over the next years. So first of all, the electronic and photonic components and the software, it's very important, that defines how they work are the key digital technologies that underpin a lot of all the digital systems, and the digitalizations of all sectors accelerates, and most industries depend on early access to these digital components. So dependence on these technologies represents a very clear threat to Europe's autonomy, particularly in periods of geopolitical instability. So we will develop actions under this destination to build strength of the EU in low power consumption and ultra secure components. And we also need to develop essential electronic and photonic components for a wide range of applications, such as healthcare equipment, electric and autonomous vehicles, manufacturing and production plants and equipment, and the like. These actions in processors, in electronics, will also be complemented by actions under the key digital technology joint undertaking that will benefit for of a budget of almost $500,000 for the first 2 years. So again, complementarity between the actions developed in those first three rows and elements of this destination and the KDT-JU. Then on 6G, the RNI initiatives on 6G have started in leading regions worldwide, and we need in Europe also to engage now and to be among the top influencers of this technology. So here in this work program, there will be only 2 actions which are research and exploratory and cross disciplinary topics, but most of the actions in 6G will be taken up in the SNS, Smart Networks and Services joint undertaking. Then the very important area, of course, of AI and robotics, the next 2 elements of these destinations. We are very well positioned in Europe in key areas of research in AI and robotics, but we need substantial efforts to transform this into AI technology products. So there is a room for improved adoption by industry, which requires a drastic increase of industry-driven research and innovation, from basic research to large-scale piloting. So these topics in this destination will be really industry-driven AI and robotic applications to further boost the adoption of AI across the economy. The next element of this destination is the emerging enabling technologies. The objective of these actions are to identify early technologies that have the potential to become Europe's future leading technologies in all areas of this cluster, and to establish industry leadership in these technologies from the outset. So there will be links, of course, to the European Innovation Council in those topics. Then the very important section on quantum technologies, which is a domain of global importance that will bring transformative advances in medicine, cryptography, Earth observation, and many more fields in the next few years. Quantum computers will be able to find solutions in a few hours to problems that are currently solved in hundreds of days, or if not years. So this enormous potential means that access to the world-leading quantum computers, along with the latest supercomputers, will be crucial to Europe's strategic autonomy in the coming years. Mastering quantum cryptography will also be key for Europe's future security. So the value of quantum is clear, and there is a global context where Europe must continue to its actions launched since 2018 with the quantum technology flagships under H2020. So these actions in this destination will develop quantum technologies in their applications in the areas of quantum computing, quantum simulation, sensing, and communication. And then finally, since the launch of the Graphene flagship in 2013, we have installed European leadership in graphene and related 2D materials. The work is now coming to a critical point where first simple products are being launched. RNI activities need to be pursued and accelerated in order to translate achieved technology advances that are at TRA 3 to 5 into concrete innovation opportunities and into production capabilities in many industrial sectors, in aviation, automotive, electronics, batteries, healthcare. And again, there will be a session dedicated to this destination and the topics there tomorrow morning, at the end of the morning, and then in the afternoon. And finally, the third destination with digital topics in it is the last one, human-centered and ethical development of industrial technologies. First of all, the AI topics come here again, and here it's more AI research, earlier research and lower TRL than in the destination 4, which has the industry-driven topics, if you will. And so the objective here in these AI topics is really to develop AI technologies that industries and citizens can trust. So the trust is the central element of these AI developments, and so that they can be used widely across industrial sectors in the future. So trustworthy AI is in particular important for applications in healthcare, of course, but also in diverse critical infrastructures and energy and transportation. Also, Internet of Trust. The distrust in the Internet is causing people to change the way they behave online. for example, by disclosing less personal information. So the objective of these actions here are really to develop a trustworthy digital environment built on a more decentralized internet to empower end users with more control over their data and their digital identity, and to enable social and business models respecting European values. So very important topics in these areas. And then finally, extended reality. Due to its low presence in the consumer electronics industry, Europe is dependent on external providers in this area. So this raises concerns about our digital sovereignty in crucial domains such as digital interaction services that are being adopted by a growing number of European users and industries. Virtual reality, extended reality technologies, or immersive environments provide numerous opportunities for personalized and innovative learning. So the proposed action here, we should contribute to build industrial leadership in extended reality technologies and immersive environments while ensuring European values of privacy and ethics and inclusiveness. And this session will be discussed and presented in more detail this afternoon. There will be tomorrow morning a session on the cross-cutting, if you will, of the horizontal topics, which is called systemic approaches to make the most of the technologies, which include the NCP National Contact Point Network support. These will be presented tomorrow morning at the start of the day. Thank you very much, and I now hand over to my colleague to present the destination on space topics.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Mats Ljungqvist. I work in DG DEFIS with space research. And I want, with this slide, in this slide, to very briefly summarize the main areas to be addressed. More details will be given, of course, in the afternoon session from 1:15, where we will go through all these topics and with a question-answer session. So the destination is very long. I think we are the longest name here. Open strategic autonomy in developing, deploying, and using global space-based infrastructure, services, applications, and data. So it should capture every aspect, hopefully. The main areas addressed now. First of all, the majority of the activities and the funding goes to supporting the European space program, the space systems that are European Union owned, that is Galileo and EGNOS, as well as Copernicus Earth observation. These are, of course, space-based infrastructures, satellites, and so on, which are EU assets. Here we have a specific responsibility to secure the future, to develop next generations of the technologies needed to stay competitive and at the top end in the international competition. So first activity listed here is EGNSS upstream. That means global navigation systems. So Galileo, EGNOS in this case. You see there are three so-called other actions. You know that in the work program we have open calls for proposals topics, but we also have other actions. And here they are, most of the funding is delegated in this particular area to European Space Agency, who is entrusted and tasked with developing the technologies for a future EGNSS future EGNSS infrastructure. On the Copernicus service, Copernicus then Earth observation is of course the other main European space system, and we devote significant efforts and research resources to the evolution of Copernicus services. Here in the form of a call for proposals for 7 topics to address the various Copernicus services. EGNSS and Copernicus applications here, these are also open call topics, using now the services and the infrastructure in place to develop new markets and new applications with the help then of, to stimulate, the objective is to stimulate this and we have devoted significant amount of funding and research effort to this. The fourth line here says SSA, GovSatcom, and Quantum. These are the new part, so to say, of the space program. EGNSS satellite navigation and Earth observation being the ones that have been developed over quite a long period now. Space surveillance, so space situational awareness, including space surveillance and tracking, governmental satellite communication, and quantum communication and sensing are topics that are included now in the space program. Here we have a mixture of open call topics and other actions. Next is Cassini Space Entrepreneurship. Here this is to support new space, to support new space actors in order to develop the European industry and the future industry using addressing new challenges in space. This is done also in conjunction with the European Innovation Council activities. We have a mixture of activities, including prizes, 2 prizes to be announced in the first 2 years. There was also a prize on low-cost European space launch in Horizon 2020, which will be awarded this year. Next is the title Competitiveness, which encompasses many things. Most importantly, perhaps satellite communication. So the commercial aspects of satellite communication and Earth observation. Europe is quite strong, or very strong, one would say, on the world market in this area, and there's a need to remain competitive and to develop the competitiveness in these areas. It's a very quickly, rapidly changing field, as you probably all know, with new constellations being launched primarily by US companies that are not traditional space companies. I think about Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and the other entrepreneurs. So Europe need to adapt and respond to this, and we need to devote efforts in this area. There is also a topic called on-orbit operations, on-orbit servicing here, where new ways of launching and managing satellites in orbit are being addressed. Access to space addresses the whole area of space launchers, rockets, if you will, including the reusability of space launchers, new high-thrust propulsion technologies, etc. And finally, again, quite a generic title, Targeted and Strategic Actions. This includes space science. I mean, the main part of space science is addressed in the Horizon Europe science pillar, but there are some specific aspects and areas that need to be addressed as well here. And then we have topics addressing critical space technologies, where Europe needs to strengthen its non-dependence, or reduce rather its dependence on technologies coming from outside Europe. And therefore we have a specific list of technologies to address that have been developed together with European Space Agency and European Defence Agency. So this is also included in this topic. But more details will be, of course, given in the dedicated session this afternoon. So thank you very much from me. I don't know who will take over. Is it Nicolas? Yes, thank you very much.
It is indeed. Thank you, Mats. And now I will close this presentation with 2 important general issues in Cluster 4 and indeed across Horizon Europe. One is social sciences and humanities, and the other is international cooperation. So starting with social sciences and humanities, we involve social sciences and humanities in projects because that can significantly improve the outcomes in many of the projects in Horizon Europe, and certainly in the digital industry and space cluster. So this is not a simple add-on. We do it because it can make a difference. And it's particularly important in Horizon Europe, with the emphasis on impact and also the emphasis on the human side. Examples in Cluster 4 include human-robot collaboration, improving working environments, human empowerment, engaging with society to develop and adopt green and digital solutions, including the topics that explicitly support social innovation and the new European Bauhaus, removing biases in artificial intelligence, trustworthiness in next generation internet and artificial intelligence. You will see that in a total of 52 topics of Cluster 4 in 2021 and 2022, there is an explicit role for social sciences and humanities practitioners for the reasons that I explained. On top of that, there are 20 topics in Cluster 4, again, over the 2 years, which specifically provide opportunities for social innovation. And these are very exciting topics, they're very interesting topics, which widen the impact of Cluster 4. Now we'll turn to international cooperation. You heard before that that in pursuit of excellence and of impact, everyone is welcome to participate in Horizon Europe and indeed Cluster 4 projects, as long as they share our values, provide free and fair access, and offer reciprocity. So there is a general opening of Horizon Europe to international cooperation. For low and middle income countries, for participants from low and middle income countries, they can participate with EU Union funding, while other countries can also participate normally without Union funding, except in justified cases. There is international cooperation that is explicitly encouraged in 42 topics of the cluster, again in 2021 and 2022. But of course, that doesn't mean that the other topics are not open. On the contrary, the international cooperation is in general welcome. You will see a flag on the portal called A Stronger Europe in the World, and that is a flag for topics where international cooperation is explicitly encouraged. As for associated countries, we are often asked whether they can participate already. The answer is that there are transitional arrangements for this year for the countries that were formally associated in Horizon 2020, plus the United Kingdom and Kosovo and Morocco, until the association agreements enter into force. They can already participate. Switzerland, the situation there depends on progress with the general cooperation agreement. So at present, it is not open, but depending on the progress, topics may become open to Swiss partners also. And finally, you all know about the so-called Article 22.5. I'm not going to say a lot about that now. More will be said in the context of the 2 destinations where you have the 21 topics affected by Article 22.5. And you will hear more there about the intentions of the Commission and the principles under which those topics will be opened further. And now, after this presentation, we are ready to take questions from you, general questions. There will, of course, be opportunities for you to ask questions specific to particular destinations at the respective sessions. In this session, we think it would be best to take general questions on, for example, the strategy, the impact logic, the structure, proposals, international cooperation, and so on. And in addition to the speakers, we have with us 2 colleagues who are experts on partnerships and on proposal submission and evaluation in case there are questions on those aspects. Thank you. So we have now started receiving questions through Slido, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as are possible. I would ask you once again to confine questions specific to particular destinations to the respective sessions. Let us take the question about funding for the US and Canada. In some cases, a partnership with these countries is recommended. So the answer to that is indeed, it is recommended, often in the context of manufacturing. It is not compulsory, but we feel that in topics where it is made explicit, those topics, those projects can benefit from such cooperation. And otherwise, the general principles are outlined earlier, apply. Do we see also the digitization of the space industry itself part of the objectives of Horizon Europe? Would Mats like to take that one?
Yes, Mats Ljungqvist here. We have in one of the topics under the space destination, there is indeed some effort, some resources dedicated to this. But I think in the so far as these are generic issues about the European industry, it could also be addressed in other destinations, addressing more specifically the digital transition. Detailed discussion could be held in the afternoon about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mats. Smart network systems joint undertaking. Is it open only to member states? Mathieu, would you like to take that?
Yes, so Smart Network and Services JU is a bipartite joint undertaking, meaning the Commission and private stakeholders. EuroHPC and KDT, Digital Technologies are tripartite, meaning the Commission, private partners, and member states. So the SNS is primarily between Commission and the private stakeholders, but of course the member states are also consulted. There is a way for consulting and making, articulating also with the member states in preparing the work program. And in that context, I am not sure how also other countries than member states may be involved. I would invite also the person to maybe ask the question in the dedicated destination where 6G is discussed. Maybe an expert would from the SNSJU could also respond more precisely on the involvement of the non-member states, but it is clearly not a tripartite joint undertaking to start with.
Then we have three related questions on associate or formerly associated countries, most of which are now candidate associated countries. And those countries, the formerly associated countries in Horizon 2020, the UK, Kosovo, and Morocco are all eligible for the first call deadlines. Swiss organizations are not eligible yet. We expect developments on that, but at present they are not eligible. And the participants from those countries can certainly request EU funding, as if they are in member states. So they have exactly the same rights as partners from member states. Now there is a question about traditional ICT topics, advanced software engineering or technology enhanced learning. The work calls previously in Horizon 2020. How about now? Mathieu, would you take that?
Yeah, so here again, there is a clever articulation to be made between the work program, what the work program can cover, the budget allocated, and the key digital technologies joint undertaking, which will be an important JU, of course, with 1.8 billion euro over the 7 years. So it's a very big joint undertaking, bigger than Excel. So the scope also of this joint undertaking has increased, and will also hopefully, this is something we are working on, also cover more the software side of the things on microelectronics. So because the integration of the hardware and the software is extremely important also for the competitiveness of the product that will come out of these actions. So what is covered in the work program will be presented in details again in the destination itself tomorrow, and we will be working also with the joint undertaking to make sure that we cover all the necessary ground and articulate well the actions in the work program and in the KDTJU.
Thank you, Mathieu. There is another question on where to find topics where international cooperation is encouraged. You can find them in two ways. They're highlighted in the work program, in the scope, but also in the participant portal, there is a flag, the flag called Stronger Europe in the World, and that will allow you to filter and find all topics where international cooperation is explicitly encouraged, not only in Cluster 4, but across the work program. And now we have a number of questions on Switzerland, and perhaps as Peter Hartwig is with us, would you like to take the floor and also introduce yourself and say a bit more about Switzerland?
Yes, I can take the floor. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can.
So I can also switch on my video, but I'm afraid I don't have the nice background that you have. Okay, so yes, my name is Peter Hartwig. I am a head of unit in the DG Research and Innovation, responsible for the business processes to implement our grants. And on Switzerland, yes, so to be very precise, indeed the situation at the moment is that Switzerland, as concerns participation in proposals and calls, is in the category of high-income third countries. So in the same category as, for instance, the US or Japan and so on and so forth. This means Swiss entities can, of course, participate in the program in the same way as any other entity from any other country participates. But in the current situation, Swiss entities are not eligible for funding. That's maybe what I should say on this.
Except presumably where it is duly justified, just like high-income third countries.
Yes. So the exceptions apply like the exception to any other high-income third country. Yes.
Thank you very much, Peter. Another question is about outcomes and expected impacts. Can you explain the difference between expected impact at the level of the cluster and the outcomes? Natasha, would you like to take that? If not, I can take it. I can take it. The expected impact, as Natasha explained earlier, is at the level of the cluster. So each destination has a broad expected impact. For example, in the case of the first destination, it is the twin green and digital transition. That is set out in the text in the introduction of each destination, and proposals are expected to offer a pathway towards contributing to that expected impact. On the other hand, at the level of the topic, there are expected outcomes. So those expected outcomes have to be fulfilled by the projects that are funded under that topic. So proposers have to explain convincingly both how they will attain the expected outcomes of the respective topic, and how in the medium term or the longer term they will contribute to the expected impact of the respective destination. Of course, they will not solve that expected impact, they will not address that expected impact single-handedly, but they will contribute to it. I hope this is now clearer. What is the goal of partnerships? I think this is a question for Maria. Would you like to take the floor, Maria?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. So hello, I'm Maria Lek from DG Research Innovation, and I work in a unit that deals with horizontal overview and coordination of European partnerships. And yes, I put on also my video. Good. I also unfortunately don't have the good background, but important is indeed that the next generation of partnerships is quite different from what we had in Horizon 2020. While in the past, the focus was primarily on competitiveness, then under Horizon Europe, it's really about increasing the impact of research innovation in supporting policies and supporting the objectives of the green and digital transitions. So partnerships are really aimed at mobilizing the joint efforts together with the public and the private sector in addressing together these complex challenges and to find develop these kind of systematic solutions for the transitions that we face. So this is the sort of overall context. And of course, maybe important to know also is that in Horizon Europe, there are very specific criteria and principles for how do we set up partnerships, how do we implement and monitor them. And I would like to specifically mention that one of the important things that we do is that we are currently, we plan to have a biannual monitoring report for all the European partnerships. We'll already have a first baseline report planned for early next year. And this will also be an important momentum for all the stakeholders to really see what the partnerships are doing, how they are progressing, and to have a more better overview of their contribution to the transitions. Back to you, Niklas.
Thank you very much, Maria. There is a question on the framework partnership agreements. And if that is all right for Mathieu, I would suggest that this is dealt with in the respective destination, unless Mathieu would like to say very few words now. Is that the case, Mathieu?
No, indeed, Nicholas, I think it's best to address that in the destination discussion itself.
Very good. How will the gender dimension be evaluated? So indeed, gender is relevant in several topics, and that is made clear in the scope of the topic. And that is, in general, it can be evaluated both under impact and under the excellence of the topic, depending on the context. But where it is relevant, it will, of course, the quality of the gender integration will, of course, be evaluated. What about eligibility of Latin American countries? Well, the same principles apply. Maybe Peter could remind us which Latin American countries are high income and therefore are not automatically eligible for union funding. Peter, would you like to say something about that? But in general, the same rule applies.
Yes, yeah. Now you, of course, put me a challenge. I am afraid I don't know the list by heart. But indeed, the big part of the Latin American countries are in the low to middle income list, meaning that they are eligible for participation and also eligible for funding. There are a few exceptions, and all the lists you can find in the respective annex of the work program. So this is all available on the funding and tenders portal.
Thank you, Peter. Article 22.5, can you tell us a bit more? Which are the R&I areas affected by the limitation of participation? Well, those we will say more in the context of the respective destinations. The topics affected are in quantum technologies and in space. And you will hear more about that at the respective sessions. There are also the other topics that use it, for example, in raw materials, but there are no, those topics are already open and there are no exclusions with regard to associated countries. This is an interesting question. When I'm writing a proposal within the twin transition destination, I'm targeting that destination. When my idea is also aligned with other destinations, shall I raise this? Indeed, you can do that. As Natasha explained, there is an overlap between the all destinations of the cluster serve in one way or another the threefold vision of the cluster. So as a minimum, you need to address the, as I explained earlier, the expected impact of your destination. But of course, it will do no harm. It will help you if you also connect it to the broader vision or the expected impacts of other destinations. A good example is in manufacturing, where the manufacturing topics are in destination 1, the twin transition, and yet they have a very strong human element, and therefore they serve the impact of destination 6. That, of course, you could and should highlight in a proposal. And also you will see it explicitly addressed in some of the topics. More of that in the respective session. Now, Peter Drill talked about, it's not enforced adding, it's called a hope-on scheme, about adding members to a consortium after the proposals are accepted. Is it in 2021 calls, and will there be extra funding granted for this? The answer is, that is part of the work program of the pillar for the European research area and widening. So indeed, there is extra funding for that. As Peter Druel said, the typical funding expected to bring an additional partner from a widening country is between 250 and 400,000 euros. That funding can be sought once a proposal has been funded out of cluster 4 or indeed another cluster. So the answer to, is it in 2021 calls? The answer is yes and no. No, in the sense that you will not see it in the calls of cluster 4. But yes, in the sense that once a proposal has been funded and the project has started, it is possible to apply for this additional funding, which comes from the budget of the pillar for the European research area and widening, in order to add such a partner. I don't know whether Peter Hartwig would like to complement this answer. One tip in particular is, if you do have such a partner in mind, then it is always best to include this partner up front in the main proposal and not keep this partner out in the hope that later you will apply for this hope-on scheme. That, of course, you can do, but of course, it would increase the competition and make it harder. So the advice is, if you have identified a partner, even though this partner may benefit from the so-called hope-on scheme, please include them in the proposal at this stage and do not wait. The Hope-On scheme will open in January, and I believe that the first cutoff date will be in April. Peter, would you like to say anything more about that?
Thank you, Nicholas. You said it all very clearly. So thanks a lot. Thanks also for this question. This is a really new element, and you have two possibilities for including widening countries. Now that you form your consortia for applying to a call under the work program 2021. And if that is not the case, or it doesn't work out, but you have a project selected and there is no widening country represented, then when you started, as Nicholas explained, you have this additional opportunity, which reflects our ambition to have excellence across the entire EU. So thanks a lot for this question, and thanks, Nicholas, for having provided a very clear answer.
Thank you, Peter. Now I'm looking at the remaining questions, see how many we can take. There's a question about joint undertakings. In addition to the work program topics, there are joint undertakings, how to find those topics. Indeed, whereas for the co-program partnerships, you will find all the topics within the work program. For the joint undertakings, they are not in the work program. And would Mathieu like to say something more about the three joint undertakings and their timeline?
A few words maybe. These joint undertakings, they will hopefully be soon adopted as that they have a separate legal basis with their own regulation. There is a single regulation to cover 9 joint undertaking in this in Horizon Europe. 2 of them, KDT and SNS, are part of this regulation. It is still in negotiation at this stage, but hopefully it's coming to an end, and hopefully the regulation which will establish these 2 joint undertakings will soon be adopted after summer, and then they will be able to start operationally to launch their own work program. So in parallel, of course, of this legal process of adoption of the legal basis, there are already work ongoing on the preparation of the first work program, but it is not at the stage that can be widely presented. It is still in the making, but hopefully soon after the adoption of the regulation in the autumn, these 2 JUs will be able to issue their first work program. For Euro HPC, the legal basis is already there, but the timing is also, I think, comparable. Maybe it will be a bit more advanced in terms of work program adoption, but it is still in the making and something which will be presented rather towards the autumn.
Thank you, Mathieu. And perhaps I could add that once the respective calls are available, they will also appear on the participant portal alongside the work program topics. So you can find everything in one place. For Canada and Australia, will there be only specific calls, or they can participate with their own funding? Indeed, in general, no specific calls. In general, they participate with their own funding, as we explained, except in cases where the funding of such a partner is justified. And that would have to be addressed in the evaluation. There are some questions that I don't quite understand. Perhaps the colleagues who also see them may want to take care of them, as the case may be. But to answer one of the questions about the slides will indeed be made available. Would any colleagues like to take any of the unanswered questions, of which I don't think there's so many?
Perhaps Nicola, there's a question on opportunities in terms of social innovation that's been brought up. In addition to being a cross-cutting priority across the work program, there are specific topics, and we will be discussing them tomorrow in the session on resilient industry in the morning, that are more specific and maybe of interest to applicants who are looking for social innovation. There are two topics that we will be discussing tomorrow. So the session at 10:30 would be a good place to discuss this in more detail.
Indeed. Thank you, Natasha. What is the benefit for a project to apply for the HOPE-ON scheme? Well, the benefit, of course, is that you contribute to widening. You benefit from the experience of a new partner or partners, and there is extra funding for the project. Of course, it cannot be guaranteed. That is why the advice is, if you have a proposal and you have identified your widening, partners from widening countries, even though those may be eligible, will be eligible for the HOPE-ON scheme, it is best to include them now. But they are, of course, having obtained funding for a project, there are, of course, benefits both in terms of funding and in terms of impact in bringing additional partners from widening countries. Is there an ideal industry-academia ratio in consortia? No, there isn't. The evaluators look at the impact. Of course, in cluster 4, very high industry participation is expected and attained, including SMEs. But other than that, there are no rules and no ideal. Maybe Mathieu could say something about participation rules in the context of the joint undertakings.
Yes, to the specific question, are they limited to members? No, participation is not limited to members of joint undertaking. This, I think, has not changed compared to the Horizon 2020.
Thank you, Mathieu. And I must add that this also applies to the co-program partnerships. As you have seen, these are implemented by topics within the work program, and they are completely open to all participants, just like all the other topics in the work program. And indeed, we achieve very high participation in those topics from partners who are not formally linked to their respective associations. So 70 or 80% of the partners, of the funded partners in such projects, from our experience in Horizon 2020, do not come from the respective industrial associations.
Nicolas, there is a question number 22 on security flagging of topics and what this means in particular for Swiss partners. Maybe I should
please
spend a few words on that. Yes, so some topics in space, but I suppose elsewhere as well, are security flagged, certainly in the security cluster. It means simply that those proposals submitted to those topics will undergo a security assessment, which involves security experts from member states, national security experts, in order to assess if the project will produce deliverables that need to be classified EU confidential or EU classified information. So so it does not mean that non-EU partners can participate, but it means that there needs to be some kind of way to manage this EU classified information if that is the case. Often it can be solved by making sure that either the non-EU country involved is fully in line with the security arrangements with the European Union, or that the work is organized in such a way that only the partners that need to have access to such classified information has it. So it depends really on the topic, but there is no specific impact on the participation of non-EU countries up front, at least. I mean, it needs to be addressed within the consortium, depending on the outcome of the security assessment, which is done just after the actual proposal evaluation and before the signature of the grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mats. There is a question about whether the high performance computing, the Euro HPC, is held up by the Digital Euro program and the Connecting Europe facility. Mathieu, would you like to take that?
No, I don't think we can say it's held up by this. It's true that Digital Europe will indeed provide funding to a number of activities of deployment managed by Euro HPC. So Euro HPC will indeed manage both research and innovation actions funded by Horizon Europe and Digital Europe deployment actions. But the UHPC joint undertaking is working on the work program. Of course, they will have to take into account the Digital Europe, but I don't think it is really linked to that. And hopefully everything will be clear and available to all in terms of the work program, both of Digital Europe and UHPC in the autumn.
Thank you, Mathieu. Now we are coming to the end of our session. Perhaps one last question we can take is whether there will be partner networking events. Indeed, there are 3 brokerage events organized by national contact points, and you will find the links to these in the program of the Info Days. If you look at the bottom of days 1 and 2, you will see the links to 3 brokerage events. And I think with this, we have reached nearly the end of our session. Would any of our co-chairs like to have any closing words? No, well, in that case, I would like to thank all participants for the very interesting questions. I hope we have answered most of these. There will be further opportunities to deal with unanswered questions under the various destinations. And if any questions remain unanswered, then we will look at them once again and deal with them in the frequently asked questions that will be published. Thank you very much and goodbye.